Howdy do everybody, my name is Rocky and today I'm going to come at you with 5 newbie tips for Hades Star. That's right, newbie not booby, which I said 3 times before I took this clip successfully. And now I've ruined it because I've rambled on about it. Oh. So anyways, we're going to talk about 5 tips that I think are important when it comes to starting off in Hades Star, or whether you're a couple weeks into it, maybe you'll find some value in this video. So anyways, tip number 1, which I think is probably the most important tip, but the way I've structured this didn't make sense to do it backwards. So we're going to go with tip number 1, which is important. Placement. Placement is everything. I think I drove this home in the last video I did when I talked about short range scanner placement. If you haven't watched that video, go ahead, click the link down in the description and pause this video right now. Alright, now that you're back from watching that fabulous video, I think it's important for you guys to also think about where you're going to be putting your red star scanner placement. Red star being your PvE event, which is likely going to be the bulk of what you do. Besides toting back and forth between your shipments and mining your sector, you're going to be running a lot of red stars, your PvE events, and collecting artifacts and all that good stuff that I don't remember if you learned from the tutorial. It's been so long since I've done the tutorial. But anyways, looking at the screen here, you're going to notice that I have my red star scanner next to a research station which effectively researches for artifacts. So there's going to come a point in time where you've got more artifacts than you do time. Sorry, I said that completely wrong. There's going to come a time where you're pulling out artifacts faster than the red star is collapsing. So you want to be able to pop out of your red star, run them over into your research station, dump them off, and come back into your red star and go collect more artifacts. So the reason we also put it close to a planet, which you should deem as the least important planet in your sector, is because if your research station is full, you're going to want to dump them off into your planet. Yes, you can place your artifacts on planets. Now, I was going to cover this in number 3, tip 3, but if you come to a planet with your transport down here, if you've got an artifact down here, you can place it right on the planet just by clicking on it. It'll dump it right on. There's no time needed to dump it off. There's time needed to take that artifact off the planet but not put it back on. So you're going to want to make sure that when your research station is full, you're dumping them off onto a planet, hopping back into your red star and moving on with your life. I don't know if any of that made any sense to anyone, but it's important to know where you're going to put your red star scanner on top of your short range scanners. So there's a couple other things that you would probably want to think about when it comes to placement, but they become less relevant now that you can actually move stuff around with the latest update. Now, of course, you can't move your short range scanners out of the sector they're placed in, because that would be cheating, but everything else is movable at this point. There was a time where you couldn't move your diplomatic relations hub, and that was so annoying, and other things. So that's all I'm going to talk about placement. Think about it. And we're going to move on to tip number 2. Tip number 2 is going to be movement. The topic of tip number 2 is going to be movement. Come on, get your stuff together here. So when it comes to movement, I think it's important to know that when you click on something to move, you don't simply have to click the move button as you see here. What you can do is you can actually click and drag or drag with your finger if you're playing on a mobile device, which is what this game is intended to be. And what you're going to notice when you do that is it's going to tell you how long it's going to take to move that sector. It's going to tell you how much hydro you're going to use, and it's going to tell you how much AU it is away from that, which I think stands for astronomical unit. I don't really know. I just know it's a measurement of distance in this game, and each sector is roughly 650 AU. And the reason that's important to know is because when you start to upgrade, and this falls under the movement category of my tips, is you don't want to over-tech yourself, because when it comes to doing your upgrades, you're going to notice that things, oops, I'm in the wrong place here, things are going to start costing more hydrogen per AU that they're moved around your sector. So you're going to notice if I look at this here, which is dual laser, that it costs me 11 hydrogen per 100 AU. So if I'm moving around in a 650, sector and I'm moving X amount of sectors, you do the calculation, it's going to build up quite a bit. So you want to take that into account when balancing out things, when you're trying to decide how much tech you're going to upgrade compared to how much you're going to discover in your planet, discover in your star rather, because it's going to cost you a lot of money to move around. So movement is tip number 2. It's so important. Realize what you're doing. Think about what you're going to upgrade, what you're going to discover, stuff like that. So movement is so important. And that brings us to tip number 3, which I've already blown out of the water under tip number 1, but I'm still going to talk about it. So red stars, your PvE events where you get your artifacts, where you get your coin and your hydro and your modules that you're going to research. But what's important to know about red stars and the artifacts that you get from them is you're not limited, as I said in tip 1, to dumping them off in your research station. You can dump them off to your planets. Now, what you need to know about that, though, is that when you dump them off to planets, they are not going to build shipments. If you have one or more artifacts, as highlighted here, outposts that store one or more artifacts do not generate new shipments. So that's why it's important that when you dump them off the planets, you are putting them on planets that are less important to you, or generate the least amount of income for you, because it's going to hinder you. You're going to notice that I picked my desert planet, my starter planet, to drop my artifacts off to. It's really a matter of opinion where you're going to drop them. You just want to make sure that you think it's the least important planet in your solar system, because again, it's not going to be generating shipments. So the discrepancy here on top of this is if you're trying to get away with dumping your artifacts off onto a moon of a planet, it's still going to not generate shipments across the board. So please remember that. It's literally the whole thing. The moons and the planet, they don't generate shipments if you're dropping them off there. The topic of tip number 4 is going to be research. As mentioned in tip number 2, you don't want to over-tech yourself. You don't want to research highly into things if it's unnecessary, because the more you move, the more hydro, blah, 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 blah. But what I will say on the research side of things is you want to try to start your researching off as an explorer / adventurer, meaning work on your miners, work on your transports, because that's what's going to get you kicked off. That's what's going to get you more hydro. That's what's going to get you more coin from your transports. Don't focus on solely being a warlord. You don't want to just be a warlord and have the best guns and shields in the place. Now, it does become important to do those researches, or researching, to do that. Oh, English number 101. Wait, what? Your transport's going to want to be able to carry as much tonnage as your artifacts are, as well as being able to pick up enough shipments to clean up your planets as fast as possible. Now, having said that, what I like to focus on is my storage for my transports, and I run a shipment computer. The reason I run shipment computer is because I set 1,000,000 waypoints and I close my app and do my thing outside of the game, and then come back, set 1,000,000 waypoints, and it effectively just picks up my stuff for me. But anyways, I think the second module is really up for debate on whether you like to do autopilot, and stuff like that when you get down the road. But what I'm going to say is work on your storage capacity, maybe pick up that shipment computer if you're that type of player. And moving on to the miners, which again is your bread and butter, because your hydro technically equals coin, which technically equals more upgrades. Anyways, you want to focus on getting boost and remote mining. Those two are the most important. Don't waste your money on hydro expansion. Hydro expansion is a complete waste of money, because there's going to come a time where you're doing red stars and you're going to hit your cap anyways, and the red star is going to be near done, and it's so unimportant. Here we go with the English again. And when you're in your actual sector dropping off hydro to a nearby planet, it takes no time. So you want to focus on boost, because you want to be able to pick up that hydro as fast as possible, and you're going to want to do remote mining, in my opinion, of course. And then you want to focus on your battleships. I'm not going to talk about that. You could do a whole video on builds, assassin builds, tank builds, whatever you want to say. So I'm not going to talk about how you should upgrade your battleship. I think it's important to think about your research when it comes to your transports and your miners. And focus on the support modules if you want to. Red star scanners are really important when you start to get into the slightly higher red stars, and maybe EMP. Honestly, I didn't use support modules up until RS5, Red Star 5, so don't worry so much about that. Focus on your transports and your miners. That's what's important. And keep your ratios of what you have for those in terms of how many miners and transports to like a 2-to-1 ratio, 2 transports to 1 miner, if you can. And the fifth and final tip topic that I want to talk about is friendship. Get some friends. It's so important. Diplomatic relationship, corporation, whatever it may be. Organizing with people in this game is going to help you in the long run, whether you're doing red stars or white stars. It's important when it comes to the red stars that you're playing with people that that way you're not getting your ships blown up because some jackass decided to aggro a sentinel that came over and blew up all your transports. Been there, Cost me a lot of money to fix that, but you want to be running private red stars. Now, some people are going to recommend joining dead corporations, which are essentially just one or two people in a single corporation for the reason of running a private red star. That's kind of boring. It's kind of lonesome. It's an online game. You know, get into corporation. The community around here is so good. Everyone is so helpful. Whether you are in-game chatting with a corporation in the public space or whether you're on the Discord server asking for help, everyone's so helpful here, and it's going to help your game, like I said, in the long run. So, yeah, I think that's all I'm going to say on that. Anyways, I hope I didn't banter too much for you guys. I really appreciate you watching. If you made it to the end, hit that like button as always. Subscribe if you're new here. Man, it's getting so hot down here. I don't know what's going on. But anyways, I'll catch you guys in the next video. So if we talk about, well, what is a short range scanner? What are we talking about here? A short range scanner is essentially the utility that's going to unlock portions of your galaxy. Depending on the placement, you'll get more value for your buck and stuff like that. So that's what we're going to cover. So the overall form of your galaxy is in the shape of a